If you go to a dinner party and somebody happens to mention the famous comedy series Monty Python, even decades later there'll always be somebody there who can pretty much quote entire slabs. The stars of the series have since gone on to do many and varied things. Michael Palin has found great success as a professional traveller, hosting a number of travel series and writing associated books. For his latest one, he ventured to Brazil, but he was home in London for this interview. Mr. Palin, thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure.
You've seen an awful lot of the world with your various travel series, including the new one on Brazil. Have your travels made you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of the planet?
I would say optimistic. I mean, I'm a natural optimist anyway. But I think one of the most important things is that people talk to each other in whatever situation they possibly can across the nations, across the world. We're sort of brought up in a tendency to be frightened of places and frightened of the world, and to see the world as a place under threat, under siege by all sorts of dark forces. When I travel, generally speaking, most people who don't have guns are really, really nice, friendly, and they share an awful lot with you. You know, it's things like families, homes, children, education, all that sort of thing is almost universal. So I feel the more we can actually talk to each other and try and realise that we share more than divides us, the better the world will be. So I'm optimistic.
Tell me a little bit about what Brazil was like. Was it what you had anticipated it to be?
In some ways it was. I mean, the beaches are beautiful, the sun shines a lot, everyone's always doing the samba, and they generally have a very relaxed attitude to life. But there were other elements that I hadn't expected.
I've been told the parade's theme is peace, and I'm to wear all white, which is why I end up looking like a kidnapped deck chair attendant. I feel, to quote an Eric Idle line, like a lost lamb in an abattoir.
Are there still parts of the world that are genuinely undiscovered?
I'm sure there are. I mean, you just don't know where they are. They're probably some parts of, you know, the USA in the remote desert that people really rarely go. You hear stories of people getting lost. That extraordinary story of the young man who got trapped in a canyon, had to cut off his wrist to free himself. I mean, there was no one around there for about 2 or 3 days. So I think in all parts of the world you can find places where people just don't go.
I bet even if you were in the most remote canyon, the first person who came up would say, "Oh, Monty Python, oh, that is an ex-parrot."
Yes, they'd say all that before they freed me, I know that. You know, I'd have to sing the entire Lumberjack song before they sort of dug me out.
I cut down trees where a hill suspend is and a bar. I wish I'd been a girlie, just like my dear papa. I cut down trees where a hill suspending and a bar. I wish I'd been a girlie, just like my dear papa.
Oh, Feathers! And I thought you were so budge!
How often do people come up to you and quote bits of Monty Python at you?
Well, I mean, it's not a huge amount, and actually I quite like going to places where I'm not well known, because when I travel, I love being the observer, really, and rather than people looking at me. But it happens in very strange and unexpected places. I remember we were filming in an island called Little Diomede Island, which is about as remote as you can get. It's in the Bering Strait between Russia and Alaska, and we filmed with some Inuit people all day long, and they live in this on this bleak island that's icebound for most of the year, but they have some facilities and they have a schoolroom and all that. At the end of the day, they provided a sealskin boat to take me across to the Alaskan mainland. And as we were leaving, there was a lot of nodding from the elders, and I nodded because I thought it was a kind of departure ceremony. Better do what they do, and I nodded and they nodded. And finally, just before I got in the boat, they said, "Aren't you the guy from Monty Python and the Holy Grail?" And so that was pretty bewildering. And you realise, of course, now with satellite, people can see your work anywhere in the world.
Has travel made you look at England with different eyes?
Yes, I think it does. I think, you know, its absence makes the heart grow fonder in a strange way. I love coming back to England when I've been on long journeys. you know, the green hills, the fields, the hedges, all that sort of stuff. I suddenly look at them in a way that I probably wouldn't were I living in England all the time. At the same time, it makes you aware, very much aware, that, you know, England is not the centre of the world. You travel to places where people don't care a damn what's going on in Westminster and have no idea who the Prime Minister is. And it's good to remember that actually we here tend to think that we are the centre of the world, and of course we're not. So you get a sense of perspective from travel as well.
I've noticed when I've travelled that you realise things that seem normal in your home country, actually you realise, oh, that's not normal, it's peculiar to my own country. In Australia, for example, the tendency to poke fun at people and to think it's a joke. In a lot of countries around the world, that's not considered very funny. Have you noticed anything like that about England?
Oh, well, there's lots about England. I mean, of course, in England, the great thing is our national sport, which is apologising. You know, if you're in a crowd of people and someone treads very heavily on your foot and draws blood, you're the one who says sorry. You know, it's kind of very bizarre. I don't know anywhere in the world that apologises quite as fast as the Brits do. I'm sorry about that.
You've been to Australia on one episode of one of your travel series. Do you think that we could entice you back for a follow-up?
Well, I love going to Australia. Now I'm coming to Australia in about a couple of weeks. And there's always lots going on in Australia, and I like the sense of humour there, although I have done some of the most back-breaking sequences ever in Australia. I remember camel rustling, catching wild camels somewhere up near Alice Springs. That's the hardest day's filming I've ever done, and I was determined never to give up. They were always saying, come on, you palmy so-and-so, get that camel and all that sort of stuff. And I said, I'm not going to give up. And I was bruised and battered by the end of the day, but it was one of the great days of filming. And it would only happen in Australia.
Michael Palin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And if you'd like more of Michael Palin, there'll be a longer version on our website, and his Brazil series airs on ABC One from November the 11th.